I'm feeling so many emotions. I don't even have a clear picture anymore of why I'd like to be thinner. It's just a mix of things. I don't want to be judged for my weight and have people who know me feel sorry for me. I don't want to feel embarrassed when I visit my hometown in case I see someone from high school. I'm just sick of all the mess that comes with being overweight. For example, am I too big to fit on this ride? Am I too heavy for that chair? Is that seatbelt going to be able to fit around me? I'm just so tired of doing mental calculations. I'm so tired of feeling like I'm failing. I'm tired of not knowing where to start. I'm so tired of looking in the mirror and not liking what I see. I don't even want to be skinny, really. I don't even want to be really skinny, sorry. I just want to be able to walk into a normal store instead of needing to buy clothes online. I feel like I can't control what I eat, and I feel like I can't stop myself eating when I'm upset. I'm just tired. I hear you. This comment was left on the video that I made. You don't want a different body, you want what comes with it, and I'll leave that linked up here and down below for you as well if you want to check that out. It's really hard when you live in fear of being judged for the way that you look. You know, some of us want a different body because we're wanting the external validation for that different body, or we feel like it gives us more freedom to have fun, for example, and many other reasons. But for some of us who want a different body simply because we don't want to be judged anymore. We may have been judged outwardly, like people have actually said things to us, or we may be mind reading judgment. So no one's actually saying anything, but we're imagining things that they might be thinking, imagining judgments, right? So there's been no questions asked in this comment. So I'm going to make a lot of assumptions as I go through just from experience. What stands out to me most from this comment is tired. You know, you if you're watching, otherwise she has mentioned being tired a lot. And in my experience, one of the main reasons that this can be occurring is because of all of the analysis and the mind reading. It feels like our mind is constantly switched on. Something that can be helpful to explore is, who is this journey for? This journey to, I'm making the assumption, to health, well-being, healthy relationship with food. Who is it for? Does it feel like it's for you, or does it feel like it's for other people? And the answer to that might not be immediately obvious, but I think it's an important place to start. Because in my experience, if we're doing these things for other people to avoid judgments or gain external validation, and that's kind of the primary driver, it often doesn't lead to a lot of success in my experience, professional and personal. And I've come to the conclusion that that's because so long as we're doing things for other people to avoid judgment or get external validation, then it tends to be coming from this fear-driven place rather than a place of what I like to refer to as intrinsic motivation. So for example, if I bought some new shoes, let's take something trivial. If I bought some new shoes, there's two different scenarios, but in both scenarios I buy a pair of new shoes. And in scenario A, I'm buying these new shoes because I think that other people will approve of them, they'll like them, they won't judge me for them. And in scenario B, I'm buying these shoes because I like them. Doesn't matter what anyone else's opinion is, doesn't even cross my mind. I like them, so I'm going to get them. Now in scenario A there, if my motivation is to get external validation and avoid judgment from others, then there's so much analysis that has to go into that, because ultimately I don't know what other people are thinking. If I think about it long enough or hard enough and analyze it enough, maybe I can get some sense about what shoes other people will like and what they won't judge me for. And because there's all of this analysis and feeling of obligation, this is relying on willpower. You know, I'm having to put in willpower and effort that I'm not intrinsically motivated to put in. And so that's going to be a finite resource. It's going to be tiring, and eventually it's going to occur where I'm just like, oh, screw this, you know, I don't want to put in effort or willpower. I don't have enough reserves anymore. So it's just going to get put to one side, if you see what I mean. Or I'm going to start to build up resentment over time if I'm doing this in many, many different areas of life. It's not going to feel right to me. I'm not going to feel aligned, as it were. And again, that's exhausting, and it's going to run out eventually. I've lived both ways. I've lived and been to avoid judgment and to gain external validation. And I've lived on the other side of the fence where I'm doing and being in a way simply because it feels right to me and it feels aligned to me, regardless of other people's responses. And I've had much more success and had a lot more progress being on this side of the fence. And I think what I've concluded the main reason for that is because when I'm on this side of the fence, I'm not doing the pendulum swinging. When I was seeking external validation or trying to avoid judgment, I was always gambling with my choices and way of being as to how I was going to feel. Sometimes I'd get the external validation or avoid judgment and I'd feel good, and sometimes I'd be judged as I saw it, or I wouldn't get the external validation and then I would feel down and demotivated. Whereas on this side of the fence, I don't have these ups and downs in motivation. It's like when I was on this side of the fence, I was motivated so long as everything was going well, right? If I was getting a lot of external validation or was mind reading external validation, like if I was losing weight back in my days when I was struggling with food, if I was losing weight, then I feel motivated to keep going, right? Because that's where I drew my motivation from, was, am I getting external validation? Am I avoiding judgment? Yes, amazing, and keep going, keep going, keep going. But eventually the moment would come where I wouldn't be getting that external validation, or I'd gain a pound, for example, of weight, or I'd experience some judgment, and my motivation just went entirely along with it. And I wasn't happy or fulfilled living like that. I felt like I was constantly chasing, and I felt like I didn't know myself. I didn't feel centered in myself. I didn't feel aligned to myself, right? Whereas on this side of the fence, where I'm doing things and being in a way that supports me, and I'm doing what feels right to me, and I'm living for me, so to speak, there aren't these spikes and troughs in motivation. There isn't this pendulum swinging. Now, whether I'm doing something that's progressing me or supporting me or not, I feel exactly the same about myself. But the point is that I want to be doing these things, and I'm intrinsically and internally motivated to be taking care of myself because I want to take care of myself. And we see this all the time with new clients or applicants that are reaching out to us because they want to work on their self-esteem and their relationship with food and their body image. This lack of internal drive to take care of themselves to their own admission. And the reason for that, which we've discovered through working with them, is because it doesn't seem that important to take care of themselves, because what's most important is to get that external validation or avoid that judgment, because that's where their sense of self-worth is hinging on. And self-worth, our opinion of ourselves, whether we like ourselves, whether we feel confident and good about ourselves, is not a small thing. And as we're seeking that validation or trying to avoid that judgment, and we're going outside of ourselves, right, to get that, we're disregarding our genuine needs, we're disregarding our genuine values, we're disregarding what feels right to us, right? Because we need that. Then self-care, taking care of ourselves and doing right by us just doesn't seem as important. And not only that, but probably recognize consciously or subconsciously that taking care of ourselves may sometimes mean sacrificing on external validation and sacrificing on judgment. And there's no way that we would want to do that if our sense of self-worth is hinging on it. Does it make sense? And so I've heard many applicants now and new clients say to us, why don't I want to take care of myself? Do I hate myself? And to that I'd respond, no, it's not because, you hate yourself. I mean, I'd certainly argue against that. I see it as you're intentionally disregarding your well-being and what feels right to you. Yes, because you're trying to chase your sense of self-worth. So you are trying to do right by yourself. You want to feel worthy, you want to feel good enough. And so it's an act of self-care to try to chase that. It's just that where that's hinging on may not be entirely helpful for you. And as long as that continues to hinge on other people's responses, and we continue to understandably chase that and then disregard ourselves and go outside of ourselves to obtain that, this can just erode self-esteem like crazy even further. And then what seems like a really good idea when we've got lowered self-esteem, to keep chasing that external validation and to keep trying to avoid those judgments. And then as our self-esteem is eroding, it becomes harder and harder often, or it makes logical sense that it becomes harder to then take care of ourselves genuinely and want to take care of ourselves and be intrinsically motivated to take care of ourselves. And so to this person who's left this comment, if you're watching, I would ask you to consider, Are you living from the outside in at the moment or the inside out? And see it time and time again in reference to what you said here. I feel like I can't control what I eat, and I feel like I can't stop eating when I'm upset. These control and stop implies that you're trying to use willpower and force and maybe even self-criticism and judgment to kind of keep yourself in check. And that very rarely works or is effective in our experience. Not to mention that it's a really tiring and awful lived experience often. And that's often because when you're living from the outside in, you're not exploring compassionately and curiously, what do I need right now? What place is this coming from? What's driving my behavior here? Isn't that interesting that I feel this urge to do that? And that's completely valid. I'm obviously trying to meet some kind of need. Let me explore this so I can learn how to better help myself. When we're living from the outside in, it's often a lot of rules and I need to be this way. And if I step outside of these rules, then I need to berate myself or judge myself or use willpower to force myself to be different. And behavior change doesn't work like that. It is the trying to control ourselves in this manner in our experience that leads to this feeling of being out of control. Trying to stop ourselves from eating when we're upset, if we're an emotional eater, just trying to stop ourselves from doing that doesn't work, at least not over a long period of time. And that's because emotional eating, at least in our experience, in the way that we work with it, moving past emotional eating is about understanding the drivers for that eating, the unmet needs. I, for example, used to eat or restrict when I had repressed anger, when I felt angry. And I just tried to stop myself from emotionally eating in that way. But that wasn't ever going to work. What ultimately worked is understanding that I feel angry and that's valid and I'm angry for reasons, and now I need to go and set some boundaries. And that's what this anger is there for. But you can see if you're not checking in with your needs and not being curious towards yourself compassionately and being open to learning and developing that self-awareness from that curious and compassionate place, and if you're then not supporting yourself in that, then the emotional eating urges are going to continue to come up most likely. And if the urges are there, it's really hard to then not follow through on those urges because those urges are strong, right? And they feel compulsive and they're really, really hard to ignore. And all of this requires, developing self-esteem and starting to live more and more from the inside out. And so that's why I raise it. You may feel stuck because you're living from the outside in rather than the inside out. And it's not because you can't change or support yourself. It's just that you may not be actually trying to actually change. You might just be trying to force yourself to change. And you may not be trying to support yourself. You may be trying to judge and shame yourself into submission. And that's what can easily lead to this repeated sense of, I'm failing, I'm failing, I'm failing. And as our self-esteem is being eroded, then it can seem to make less and less sense to be compassionate towards ourselves and accepting of ourselves and to be curious towards ourselves, right? Because our opinion of ourselves is being eroded. So doesn't feel like something we particularly want to do a lot of the time. But developing that curiosity and that self-compassion and that self-acceptance and understanding of our needs and starting to support those is what can reverse that spiral, and it can start spiraling up in the opposite direction. And we start leading from that place of self-esteem and self-love rather than chasing it, which means that our motivation then can stay intact. And then we start to make more and more progress. I hope this has made sense. Very abstract thing to talk about sometimes, so please leave any questions that you have down below or any other comments. I hope this was helpful. I've made other videos on this topic of chasing. One's called the chasing trap and the being attached to external validation and outcomes and how it can be very disruptive to our lives and progress. I've also made so many videos on developing a healthier relationship with food, how to actually do it instead of trying to force yourself onto the healthy relationship with food diet. And if you've resonated with this video, one you may find helpful is, if you think you'll struggle with food forever, watch this. And I'll put it up here and I'll also link it down below. And if you've already watched quite a lot of this content or you want to speak to us directly, we work with people to develop a healthier relationship with food. This is what we do day in and day out. It's our bread and butter. We know it inside out and back to front. If you're looking for structured support and guidance on that journey by people who understand how to do this journey and do it right and do it well, successfully, then there is the option of being able to book in for a discovery call with us where we can talk through what's going on for you and where it is that you're trying to be, and look at our approach and see if it's the right fit for you and your needs. You can find a link to book a discovery call in pretty much all of the descriptions of these videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.